Erev Tov, everyone. Erev Tov. It's Monday. Yeah, okay. Monday night, it is 8 p.m. here on the east side of the United States, here in the diaspora. This is the Maimon Beit Knesset. Therefore, it must be Zeyde's Story Corner. That's right, Zeyde's Story Corner. Once again, here we are with on the secular new year, and we are once again with you, and that's about it. Last week was a bit of a tearjerker. Yes, it was. Yeah, a lot of you crying. Yeah, yeah. It's a good story, though. Yeah, it was. It was a very good story. If you didn't see it, then go back and watch last week's broadcast about Naphtali, the storyteller, and his source horse. Can't talk today. Yeah, yeah, I am having a little bit of trouble. Yeah, yeah. So, Naphtali, the storyteller, and his horse Sus. Okay, so let's see who we have in the chat room. We have Donald, we have Veronica, Richard, and Marshall, and watching in the background. Yeah, we have others who are watching in the background. So we're glad everybody is here, and hope you're. The weather. Hopefully, the weather is finally settling down where you are. Looks like it was a little bit hairy over the weekend for some of you, but seems to be past that now. So we shall see. But yeah, we should probably get on with the stories. I thought you'd never ask. Yeah, okay. So let me go ahead. We'll put you on your camera. Anytime now. There we are. Now I am on the camera. Okay, so last week I promised no tears tonight, no crying tonight. And Marilyn is here along with everybody else. Okay, so let us get on to our stories tonight. And our first story, again, these are the stories for children by Isaac Bashevis Singer. And, of course, we kind of learned last week that maybe not so many children are liking the stories, huh? Okay. Seems to have a lot of adults in here. So we go on. Anyway, our first story for tonight, is called Herschel and Hanukkah. 3 lights burned in old Reb Beresh's menorah. It was so quiet in the study house, one could hear the wick of the ceiling lamp sucking the kerosene. Reb Beresh was saying, "Children, when one lives as long as I do, one sees many things and has many stories to tell. What I'm going to tell you now happened in the village of Groshkal. Now, Groshkal is small even today. But when I was a boy, the marketplace was the entire town. Adrian has joined us. Good to see you, my old pal Adrian. And Yair has joined us too. Okay. So anyway, they used to joke, whenever a peasant comes with his cart to Groshkal, the head of the horse is at one end of the village, and the rear wheels of the cart are at the other end. Fields and forests surrounded Groshkal on all sides. A man by the name of Isaac Seldes, who lived there, managed a huge estate owned by a Polish squire. The squire, a count, spent all his time abroad and came to Poland only when his money was exhausted. He borrowed money from Reb Isaac Seldes on mortgage, and gradually his whole estate became Isaac's property. Officially, it still belonged to the squire because a Jew was not allowed to own land in the part of Poland which belongs to Russia. Reb Isaac managed the property with skill. The squire used to flog the peasants when they did something wrong or if the mood struck him. But Reb Isaac spoke to the peasants as if they were his equals, and they were loyal to him. When there was a wedding among them, or when a woman gave birth, he attended the celebration. When a peasant fell sick, Reb Isaac's wife, Kindle, rolled up her sleeves and applied cups or leeches or rubbed the patient with turpentine. That is an old story. Yes, it is. It is a very old story. But anyway, Reb Isaac Seldes owned a briska with 2 horses, and he rode alongside the fields and advised the peasants when to plow, what to sow, or what vegetables to plant. He had a special dairy house on the estate for churning butter and making cheese. He had a large stable of cows, hundreds of chickens that laid eggs, as well as beehives and a water mill. He had everything except children. It caused Reb Isaac and his wife grief. The medications that the doctors in Lublin prescribed for Kreinl never did any good. Even though they were only 2 people, Reb Isaac and his wife lived in a large house that had once belonged to the present squire's grandfather. But what use is a big house for just a husband and wife? However, they both had poor relatives whose children came to live on the estate. Reb Isaac hired to instruct the boys in the Bible and the Talmud. Kreindl taught the girls sewing, knitting, and needlepoint. They stitched biblical scenes onto canvas with colored thread, like the story of Abraham attempting to sacrifice his only son on an altar and the angel preventing him from doing so, or Yaakov meeting Rachel at the well and rolling the stone away so she could water the sheep. Hanukkah was always a gay occasion in the Reb Isaac's house. After blessing the candles, he gave Hanukkah money to all the children, and they all played dreidel. Grendel and her maids fried potato pancakes in the kitchen, and they were served with jam and tea. Often, poor people turned up at the estate, and whoever came hungry, in tatters, clothes, and bare feet, left with a full belly, warm clothing, and proper footwear. One Hanukkah evening, when the children were playing dreidel, Reb Isaac was playing chess with the teacher, who was not only a Talmud scholar, but also well versed in mathematics. The language, Reb Isaac heard a scratching at the door. A deep snow had fallen outside. If guests visited the estate in the winter, they came during the day, not in the evening. Reb Isaac opened the door himself, and to his amazement, on the other side of the threshold stood a fawn, still without antlers. Now, normally, an animal keeps away from human beings, but this fawn seemed hungry, cold, and emaciated. Perhaps it has lost its mother. For a while, Reb Isaac stared in wonder. Then he took the young animal by its throat and brought it into their house. When the children saw the fawn, they forgot about the dreidel and the Hanukkah gifts. They were all thrilled with the charming animal. When she saw the fawn, Grendel almost dropped the tray of pancakes she was holding. Reb Isaac wanted to give a pancake to the fawn, but Grendel called out, "Don't do it! It's too young. It needs milk, not pancakes." The maids came in, and one of them went to bring a bowl of milk. The fawn drank all of it, and lifted its head as if to say, "I want more." This little creature brought much joy to everyone in the house. All agreed that the fawn should not be let out again in the woods, which teemed with wolves, foxes, martens, and even bears. What, no lions and tigers? No, not in this part of the woods. Okay, oh well. A servant brought in some hay and made a bed for the fawn in one of the rooms. Soon it fell asleep. Reb Isaac thought that soon the children would return to their games, but all they could talk about was the fawn. Reb Isaac and Kreinel had to give them a solemn promise to keep it safe in the house until after Pesach. Now that the children had extracted this promise, a new debate began. What name to give the fawn? Almost everyone wanted to call it Herschele, which is the Yiddish word for fawn. But for some strange reason, Grendel said, "You are not going to give this name to an animal." "Why not?" the children and even the grown-ups asked in astonishment. "I have a reason." When Grendel said no, it remained no. The children had to come up with another name, and then Grendel said, "Children, I have it." "What is it?" the children asked in unison. And Grendel said, "Hanukkah." No one had ever heard of an animal called Hanukkah, but they liked it. Only now did the children start to eat pancakes, and they washed them down with tea with lemon and jam. Then they began to play dreidel again. They did not finish the games until midnight. Late at night, when Reb Isaac and Grendel went to bed, Reb Isaac asked Grendel, why didn't you like the name Herschela for the fun? And Grendel replied, it is a secret. A secret from me? Isaac asked. Since we married, you've never had any secrets from me. And Grendel answered, this time I cannot tell you. When will you tell me? Isaac asked. And Grendel said, the secret will reveal itself. Reb Isaac had never heard his wife speak in riddles, but it was not in his nature to insist or to probe. Now, dear children, I am going to tell you the secret even before Grendel told it to her husband, old Reb Beresh said. A few weeks earlier, an old man came to the estate with a sack on his back and a cane in his hand. He had a white beard and white side locks. What are you looking at? Nothing. He had a white beard and white side locks, and I lost my place. So let me just kind of riff here for a bit, and then I will find it. And when Grendel gave him food to eat, he took a large volume out of his sack, and while he ate, he read it. Grendel had never seen a beggar behave like a rabbi and a scholar. She asked him, why do you carry books on your back? Aren't they heavy? And the old man replied, the Torah is never heavy. His words impressed Grendel, so she began to talk to him, and she told him how grieved she was at not having children. Suddenly she heard herself say, I see that you are a holy man. Please pray to God for me to give me your blessing. I promise you that if your blessing is answered in heaven, I will give you a sack full of silver guldens when you return, and you will never need to beg for alms. I promise you that in about a year's time, you will have a child. Please, holy man, Grendel said, give me a token or a sign that your promise will come true. The old man said, sometime before your child is conceived, an animal will enter your house. When the child is born, call it by the name of this animal. Please remember my words. Before the old man left, Grendel wanted to give him clothes and food, but he said, God will provide all this for me. I don't need to prepare it in advance. Besides, my sack is filled with sacred books, and there is no place for anything else. He lifted his hands over Grendel's head and blessed her. Then he left as quietly as he had come. Grendel pondered the words of this strange old man for many weeks. Reb Isaac happened not to be home when he came, and Grendel did not tell her husband about his visit. She had received many wishes and benedictions from gypsies, fortune-tellers, and wanderers, and she did not want to arouse hopes in Isaac that might never materialize. That night, when the fawn came into the house, Grendel understood that this was the animal the beggar had mentioned. Since a fawn is called Herschela in Yiddish, she would give birth to a male child and call him Herschela. Grendel's words that the secret would reveal itself soon came true. She became pregnant. Rabbi Isaac understood that the coming of the fawn was an omen of this hoped-for event. He said, "When our child is born, if it is a male, we will call it Herschela." And Grendel answered, "As you wish, my beloved, so it will be." Winter passed. Spring had come. Hanukkah had been growing in the cold winter months, and he sprouted antlers. Everyone could see that the animal was no longer happy indoors. His beautiful eyes expressed a yearning to go back to the forest. One morning, Grendel gave Hanukkah a tasty meal of hay mixed with chopped potatoes and carrots, and then opened the gate to the field and the forest. Hanukkah gave his mistress a look that said, "Thank you." And he ran to the green pastures in the woods. Grendel predicted that in the winter Hanukkah would turn up again, but Reb Isaac said such things cannot be foretold. Hanukkah had grown up, and an adult deer can find its own food even in winter. Not long after, Grendel gave birth to a healthy little boy with dark hair and brown eyes, and there was great joy in the house. The happy father and mother had prepared a special repast for the poor on the day of the circumcision ceremony. Reb Isaac and Grendel both hoped that the old beggar might hear about it and come to the feast, but he never came. However, the poor people heard about it and they came. A large table was placed on the lawn, and the needy men and women were served the challah, gefilte fish, chicken, fruit, as well as wine and honey cake. Some of the younger crowd danced a scissor dance. I had to look that up. Yeah, so did I. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it actually comes from South America originally. Anyway, back to this scissor dance. A good morning dance, an angry dance, a Kazatsky before he left. All the poor got gifts of money, food, and clothes. The summer drew to a close, and it became cool again. After the Sukkot holiday, the rains and snowfall and the frost began. The feast of Hanukkah approached, and although everyone wondered what had happened to the fawn in the cold weather, nobody spoke about it, so as not to worry Grendel. The winter was even more severe than the former one. The whole estate was buried in snow. On the first night of Hanukkah, Grendel and the maids were busy frying pancakes. After Rabbi Isaac blessed the first light and gave coins to the children, they sat down to play dreidel. The baby, Herschel, slept in his cradle. The children of the house had prepared a gift for him, a fawn made of sugar, and on its belly was the inscription Hanukkah. When it was given to Herschel, he immediately began to suck on it. But the fawn didn't come that night. Reb Isaac comforted the Crandall by quoting the Gemara, "Miracles don't happen every day." Crandall shook her head. "I hope to God that Hanukkah is not hungry and cold." On the second night of Hanukkah, while all the children were playing dreidel, Reb Isaac was about to checkmate the teacher, and Crandall, along with the maids, was preparing to clean the table. They heard a scratching at the door. Crandall ran to open it and cried out with joy. At the door stood Hanukkah, already half-grown deer, his body silvery with frost. He had not forgotten his benefactors. He had come to stay for the winter. Herschel woke up from the noise, and when he was shown the animal, he stretched out his little hand toward him. Hanukkah licked his hand with his tongue as if he knew that Herschel was his namesake. From then on, the deer came to the estate every year and always about the same time of Hanukkah. He had become a big stag with large antlers. Herschel, too, although not as fast. But probably without the antlers, right? Yeah, probably not. Probably not antlers. Okay, anyway. So, the third winter, the deer brought a doe with him. Oh, so it's going to be a Three Stooges thing, huh? See the deer? The deer has a little doe. How much? $3. Anyway. So let's see. Let me find my place again. It seems that he had fought for his mate with another stag because part of his antler was broken. Hanukkah and his mate were taken in. There was much discussion among the children what to name Hanukkah's wife. This time the teacher made a proposal. She was named Zot Hanukkah. This is how the section of the Bible that is read on Shabbat of Hanukkah begins. The word Zot, which means this, indicates the feminine gender. This name pleased everyone. Reb Beresh paused for a long while. The lights in the brass lamp were still burning. The children felt that the little flames were also listening to the story. Then a boy asked, "Did the old beggar ever come back?" "No, I never heard that he did, but you can be sure that this man was no ordinary beggar." "What was he?" another boy asked. "The prophet Eliyahu," Reb Beresh said. "It is known that Eliyahu is the angel of good tidings. He never comes in the image of an angel. People would go blind if they looked into the dazzling light of an angel. He always comes disguised as a poor man. Even Moshiach, according to the Talmud, will come in the disguise of a poor man riding on a donkey." Old Reb Beresh closed his eyes, and it was hard to know whether he was dozing or contemplating the coming of Messiah. He opened them again and said, "Now, you can go home and play dreidel. Will you tell us another story tomorrow?" Another boy asked. And old Reb Beresh replied, "With God's help, I have lived long and I have many stories to tell, more than you have hair on your sidelocks." And that is the end of that story. See, I told you, no tears tonight. Okay. So, the next one is a funny story. So, this one, we will take out a break. And when we come back, we will hear the story about when Shlomiel went to Warsaw. So, everybody, stay tuned. We'll be back in 6.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Delicious things to eat.
The popcorn can't be beat. The sparkling drinks are just dandy. The chocolate bars and the candy. So let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
It's intermission time, folks, so hurry, hurry, hurry. Step right over to our refreshment center for the most extravagant array of refreshment goodies ever assembled under one roof. Enjoy breathtaking, mouth-watering goodies, everything from a snack to a delicious full meal. At our refreshment center, you'll find a large variety of goodies to satisfy your hunger, your thirst, or your sweet tooth. So hurry, hurry, hurry. Visit our refreshment center now. The show starts in 5 minutes. The show starts in 4 minutes. The show starts in 3 minutes. show starts in 2 minutes. The show starts in 1 minute. And now, on with the show.
And we have the wrong camera. Let's try and get the right camera here. See, that's better. Okay. Oh, my goodness. That's live broadcasting for you folks. These things happen. What can you do about it, eh? Okay. Speaking of schlemiels, we go on with our story now. Okay. This story is called When Schlemiel Went to Warsaw. Though Schlemiel was a lazybones and a sleepyhead and hated to move, he always daydreamed of taking a trip. He had heard many stories about faraway countries, huge deserts, deep oceans, and high mountains, and often discussed with Mrs. Schlemiel his great wish to go on a long journey. Mrs. Schlemiel would reply, "Long journeys are not for Schlemiel. You better stay home and mind the children while I go to market and sell my vegetables." Yet Schlemiel could not bring himself to give up his dream of seeing the world and its wonders. A recent visitor to Helm had told Schlemiel marvelous things about the city of Warsaw. How beautiful the streets were, how high the buildings and luxurious the stores. Schlemiel decided once and for all that he must see this great city for himself. He knew that one had to prepare for a journey, but what was there for him to take? He had nothing but his old clothes he wore. One morning, after Mrs. Schlemiel left for the market, he told the older boys to stay home from Cheder and mind the younger children. Then he took a few slices of bread, an onion, and a clove of garlic, and put them in a kerchief, tied it into a bundle, and started out for Warsaw on foot. There was a street in Helm called Warsaw Street, and Shlomo believed that it led directly to Warsaw. While still in the village, he was stopped by several neighbors who asked him where he was going. Shlomo told them that he was on his way to Warsaw. "What will you do in Warsaw?" they asked him. Shlomo replied, "What do I do in Helm? Nothing." He soon reached the outskirts of town. He walked slowly because the soles of his boots were worn through. Soon the houses and stores gave way to pastures and fields. He passed a peasant driving an ox-drawn plow. After several hours of walking, Shlomo grew tired. He was so weary that he wasn't even hungry. He lay down on the grass near the road for a nap, but before he fell asleep, he thought, when I wake up, I may not remember which is the way to Warsaw and which leads back to Helm. Well, after pondering a moment, he removed his boots and set them down beside him with the toes pointing towards Warsaw and the heels towards Helm. He soon fell asleep and dreamed that he was a baker baking onion rolls with poppy seeds. Customers came to buy them, and Shlomo said, "These onion rolls are not for sale." "Then why do you bake them?" "They are for my wife and my children and for me." Later, he dreamed that he was the king of Helm. Once a year, instead of taxes, each citizen brought him a pot of strawberry jam. Shlomo sat on a golden throne, and nearby sat Mrs. Shlomo, the queen, and his children, the princes and princesses. They were all eating onion rolls with spooning up big portions of strawberry jam. A carriage arrived and took the royal family to Warsaw, America, and to the river Sambatchan, which spurts out stones the week long and rests on Shabbat. Near the road, a short distance from where Shlomo slept, was a smithy. The blacksmith happened to come out just in time to see Shlomo carefully placing his boots at his side with the toes facing in the direction of Warsaw. The blacksmith was a prankster, and as soon as Shlomo was asleep, he tiptoed over and turned the boots around. When Shlomo awoke, he felt rested but hungry. He got out a slice of bread, rubbed it with garlic, and took a bite of onion. Then he pulled on his boots and continued on his way. He walked along, and everything looked strangely familiar. He recognized houses that he had seen before. It seemed to him that he knew the people he met. Could it be that he had already reached another town? Shlomo wondered. And why was it so similar to Helm? He stopped a passerby and asked the name of the town. "Helm," the man replied. Shlomo was astonished. How was this possible? He had walked away from Helm. How could he have arrived back there? He began to rub his forehead and soon found the answer to the riddle. There were 2 Helms, and he had reached the second one. Still, it seemed very odd that the streets, the houses, the people were so similar to those in Helm that he left behind. Shlomiel puzzled over this fact until he suddenly remembered something he had learned in Cheder. The earth is the same everywhere. And so why should this second Helm be exactly like the first one? This discovery gave Shlomiel great satisfaction. He wondered if there was a street here like his street and a house on it like the one he lived in. And indeed, he soon arrived at an identical street and house. Evening had fallen. He opened the door, and to his amazement, he saw a second Mrs. Shlomiel with children just like his. Everything was exactly the same as in his own household. Even the cat seemed the same. Mrs. Shlomiel at once began to scold him. "Shlomiel, where did you go? You left the house alone. And what have you there in that bundle?" The children ran to him and cried, "Papa, where have you been?" Shlomiel paused for a moment, and then he said, "Mrs. Shlomiel, I'm not your husband. Children, I am not your papa." "Have you lost your mind?" Mrs. Shlomiel screamed. "I am Shlomiel of Helm 1, and this is Helm 2. Mrs. Shlomiel clapped her hands so hard that the chicken sleeping under the stove awoke with fright and flew out all over the room. "Children, your father has gone crazy," she wailed. She immediately sent one of the boys for Gimple the healer. All the neighbors came crowding in. Shlomiel stood in the middle of the room and proclaimed, "It's true. You all look like the people in my town, but you are not the same. I came from Helm 1, and you live in Helm 2. "Shlomiel, what's the matter with you?" someone cried. "You're in your own house, with your own wife and children, your own neighbors and friends." No, you don't understand. I come from Helm 1. I was on my way to Warsaw. And between Helm 1 and Warsaw, there is Helm 2, and that is where I am. "What are you talking about? We all know you, and you know all of us. Don't you recognize your chickens?" "No, I'm not in my town," Shlomiel insisted. "But," he continued, "Helm 2 does have the same people and the same houses as Helm 1, and that is why you are mistaken. Tomorrow, I will continue on to Warsaw." "In that case, where's my husband?" Mrs. Shlomiel inquired in a rage, and she proceeded to berate Shlomiel with all the curses she could think of. "How should I know where your husband is?" Shlomiel replied. Some of the neighbors could not help laughing. Others pitied the family. Gimple the healer announced that he knew no remedy for such illness. After some time, everybody went home. Mrs. Schlemiel had cooked noodles and beans that evening, a dish that Schlemiel especially liked. And she said to him, "You may be mad, but even a madman has to eat." "Why should you feed a stranger?" Schlemiel asked. "As a matter of fact, an ox like you should eat straw, not noodles and beans. Sit down and be quiet. Maybe some food and rest will bring you back to your senses." "Mrs. Schlemiel, you're a good woman. My wife wouldn't feed a stranger. It would seem that there is some small differences between the two helms." The noodles and beans smelled so good that Schlemiel needed no further coaxing. He sat down and he ate. He spoke to the children. "My dear children, I live in a house that looks exactly like this one. I have a wife, and she is like your mother, as two peas are like to each other. My children resemble you as drops of water resemble one another." The young children laughed. The older ones began to cry. Mrs. Schlemiel said, as if being a Schlemiel wasn't enough, he had to go crazy in addition. "What am I going to do now? I won't be able to leave the children with him when I go to market. Who knows what the madman might do?" She clapped her head in her hands and cried out, "God in heaven, what have I done to deserve this?" Nevertheless, she made up a fresh bed for Schlemiel. And even though he had napped during the day near the smithy, the moment his head touched the pillow, he fell fast asleep, as soon snoring loudly. He again dreamed that he was the king of Helm, and that his wife, the queen, had fried for him a huge pan full of blintzes. Some were filled with cheese, others with blueberries or cherries, and all were sprinkled with sugar and cinnamon and were drowning in sour cream. Schlemiel ate 20 blintzes all at once and hid the remainder in his crown for later. In the morning, when Schlemiel awoke, the house was filled with townspeople. Mrs. Schlemiel stood in their midst, her eyes red with weeping. Schlemiel was about to scold his wife for letting so many strangers into the house, but then he remembered that he himself was a stranger here. At home, he would have gotten up, washed and dressed. Now, in front of all these people, he was at a loss as to what to do. As always, when he was embarrassed, he began to scratch his head and pull at his beard. Finally, overcoming his bashfulness, he decided to get up. He threw off the covers and put his bare feet on the floor. "Don't let him run away," Mrs. Schlemiel screamed. "He'll disappear, and I'll be a deserted wife without a Schlemiel." At this point, Baruch the baker interrupted. "Let's take him to the elders. They'll know what to do." "That's right. Let's take him to the elders," everyone agreed. Although Schlemiel insisted that since he lived in Helm 1, the local elders had no power over him, several of the strong young men helped him into his pants his boots, his coat, and cap, and escorted him to the house of grown ox. The elders, who had already heard of the matter, had gathered early in the morning to consider what was to be done. As the crowd came in, one of the elders, Dope Lakish, was saying, "Maybe there really is 2 helms. If there are 2 helms, then why can't there be 3, 4, or even 100 helms?" And the donkey interrupted. "And even if there are 100 helms, must there be a shlemiel in each one of them?" argued Shmendrik Numbskull. Gronomax, the head elder, listened to all the arguments, but was not yet prepared to express an opinion. However, his wrinkled, bulging forehead indicated that he was deep in thought. It was Gronomax who questioned Shlemiel. Shlemiel related everything that had happened to him, and when he finished, Gronom asked, "Do you recognize me?" "Surely, you are wise Gronom Ox." "And in your helm, is there also a Gronom Ox?" "Yes, there is a Gronom Ox, and he looks exactly like you." "Isn't it possible that you turned around and came back to Helm?" Gronom inquired. "Why should I turn around? I'm not a windmill," Shlemiel replied. "In that case, you are not this Mrs. Schlemiel's husband." "No, I'm not." "Then Mrs. Schlemiel's husband, the real Schlemiel, must have left the day you came." "It would seem so." "Then he'll probably come back." "Probably." "In that case, you must wait here until he returns. Then we'll know who is who." "Dear elders, my Shlemiel has come back," screamed Mrs. Shlemiel. "I don't need 2 Shlemiels. One is more than enough." "Whoever he is, he may not live in your house until everything is made clear," Gronom insisted. "Where shall I live?" Shlemiel asked. "In the poorhouse." "What will I do in the poorhouse?" "What do you do at home?" "Good God, who will take care of my children when I go to market?" moaned Mrs. Shlemiel. "Besides, I want a husband. Even a Shlemiel is better than no husband at all." "Are we to blame your husband left you and went to Warsaw?" Gronom asked. "Wait until he comes home." Mrs. Shlemiel wept bitterly, and the children cried too. Shlemiel said, "How strange! My own wife scolded me. My children talk back to me. And here, a strange woman and strange children want me to live with them. It looks to me as if Helm 2 is actually better than Helm 1. "Just a moment, I think I have an idea," interrupted Gronom. "What is your idea?" Zinvel Nini inquired. "Since we decided to send Shlemiel to the poorhouse, the town will have to hire someone to take care of Mrs. Schlemiel's children so she can go to market. Why not hire Shlemiel for that?" "It's true. He is not Mrs. Shlemiel's husband or the children's father, but he is so much like the real Shlemiel that the children will feel at home with him." "What a wonderful idea!" cried Feivel Thichtwit. "Only King Solomon could have thought of such a wise solution," agreed Randall Fool. "Such a clever way out of a dilemma could only have been thought of in our helm," chimed the Shemen Drich Nomskal. "How much do you want to be paid to take care of Mrs. Schlemiel's children?" asked Gronem. For a moment, Schlemiel stood there completely bewildered. Then he said, 3 groschen a day." "Idiot, moron, ass!" screamed Mrs. Schlemiel. "What are 3 groschen nowadays? You shouldn't do it for less than 6 a day." She ran over to Schlemiel and pinched him on his arm. That's what my mother used to do. But never mind. Schlemiel winced and cried out, "She pinches just like my wife." The elders held a consultation among themselves. The town budget was very limited. Finally, Gronem announced, 3 groschen may be too little, but 6 groschen a day is definitely too much, especially for a stranger. We will compromise. We will pay you 5 groschen a day, Schlemiel. Do you accept?" Yes, but how long am I to keep this job?" "Until the real Schlemiel comes home." Gronem's decision was soon known throughout Helm, and the town admired his great wisdom, and that of all the elders of Helm. At first, Schlemiel tried to keep 5 groschen that the town paid him for himself. "If I'm not your husband, I don't have to support you," he told Mrs. Schlemiel. "In that case, since I'm not your wife, I don't have to cook for you or darn your socks or patch your clothes." And so, of course, Schlemiel turned over his pay to her. It was the first time that Mrs. Schlemiel had ever gotten any money for her household from Schlemiel. Now, when she was in a good mood, she would say to him, "What a pity you didn't decide to go to Warsaw 10 years ago." "Don't you ever miss your husband?" Schlemiel would ask. "And what about you? Don't you miss your wife?" Mrs. Schlemiel would ask. And both would admit that they were quite happy with matters as they stood. Years passed, and no Schlemiel returned to Helm. The elders had many explanations for this. Zinval Nini believed that Schlemiel had crossed the Black Mountains and had been eaten alive by cannibals who lived there. Dopi Lakish thought that Schlemiel most probably had come to the castle of Asmodeus, where he had been forced to marry a demon princess. Shmendrek Numskull came to the conclusion that Schlemiel had reached the end of the world and had fallen off. There were many theories, for example, that the real Schlemiel had lost his memory and had simply forgotten that he was Schlemiel. Such things do happen. Gronem did not like to impose his theories on other people. However, he was convinced that Schlemiel had gone to the other Helm, where he had exactly the same experience as Schlemiel in this Helm. He had been hired by the local community to take care of the other Mrs. Schlemiel's children for a wage of 5 groschen a day. As for Schlemiel himself, he no longer knew what to think. The children were growing up and soon would be able to take care of themselves. Sometimes Shlemiel would sit and ponder, where is the other Shlemiel? When will he come home? What is my real wife doing? Is she waiting for me, or has she gotten herself another Shlemiel? These were questions he could not answer. Even now and then, Shlemiel would still get the desire to go traveling, but he could not bring himself to start out. What was the point of going on a trip if it led nowhere? Often, as he sat alone puzzling over the strange ways of the world, he would become more and more confused and begin humming to himself, those who leave Helm end up in Helm. Those who remain in Helm are certainly in Helm. All roads lead to Helm, and all the world is one big Helm. Boy, isn't that the truth? Thank you all for being here tonight. We will begin another story tomorrow or for next week. Don't forget, tomorrow night is the Rabbis Discuss, and Wednesday is the Torah Study in Depth with Rabbi A. And then Friday night is Kabbalat Ma'ariv Shabbat service, and Shabbat is Shachrit Musaf at 10 a.m. Eastern. Until then, my dear friends, we shall simply say, Laila Tov.